People who've had a gun pointed at them, what's your story? Write in the comments what you think about it. How was it for you? Enjoy the show. Story 1. I was 15, and I was riding my dirt bike up on a strip job above my house. Where I live is all mountains and a lot of drug addicts who want to get high off anything they can get their hands on. As I'm riding, I see someone who looks passed out. Keep in mind there was a party up there the night before, so I just assumed it was one of them. I went to check on him, and as I get closer, I realize it's not a kid. It's a guy in his late 40s, early 50s who was clearly a user. I shouted out to him and asked if he was okay and if I needed to call somebody. He must have took it the wrong way because instantly he starts charging at me. I run back to my bike and I drive off a little bit when I hear a gunshot, and I look back and there he is with a gun pointed to me as I ride off. I called the police and they did an investigation, and it led to nothing. Never seen the guy since. Story 2, I parked too close to the line at our apartment complex. Not on the line though. Some guy came out of nowhere and starts freaking out on me. I had a long day dealing with people at work. Dispensary agent in a shady part of town. So I hopped my ass in and out of the car, stating I could get in and out just fine and for him to fuck off. He disappeared and came back with an AK. I guess he was trying to intimidate me. 5'3", 115 lbs. But I'm autistic, grew up in Oakland, and have dealt with assholes my whole life. In hindsight, my lack of fear saved my ass. He proceeded to run into the street continuously screaming, "Let's go to war." His GF or wife ended up coming out telling me I needed to get out of there. I laughed and told her they probably should and how this complex sucks. A few hours later, I get a knock at my door. It was the guy. He apologized, realized I was smoking weed, and well, we became buds. He didn't let anyone else in that neighborhood mess with me for the remainder of my lease. Story 3. First time I was 15. Turned out a girl I had recently hooked up with had an older boyfriend that she didn't tell me about. The boyfriend befriended one of my friends to get to me, drugged me, put something in my drink, and I woke up in the middle of the night in Echo Park with the guy standing over me, pointing a gun at my head. I was able to talk him down. Second time I was 17, and it was a cop. I got pulled over for speeding late at night on an otherwise empty street. Cop was by himself, which seemed strange, and his car, brand new 4th gen Caprice, was overheating from his short acceleration to catch up to me, and steam was blowing out from under the hood. Cop came running over, gun drawn, and pointed it straight at my head, and I could see him physically shaking, with finger on the trigger. Cop pulled me out of the car, slammed me onto the hood of his car, which burned me. He cuffed me and put me in the back of his car. After he ran my license and saw that I was a minor with 0 record, he started to calm down and eventually let me go with a citation for speeding, but slower than I was actually going. I always figured that he realized that he went a bit overboard with his initial reactions. I have always wondered what was going on there, with him being alone, and losing his cool like that, though. I did not resist in any way and remained calm, despite being scared out of my mind. Story 4. I grew up in rough neighborhoods, so I know this doesn't apply to most people who grew up in more civil environments, like suburbs, you know. I lead with this because I grew up seeing guns, people pulling out guns, but never pointed directly at me. Part of this was thanks to my street-brewed father who taught me and my siblings how to exist around the criminally minded. Yet, there was one time that it happened, and I hope this serves as a lesson to others. One time, I went on a double date with a friend and his GF, and she decided to bring her cousin with us to the club, a chick I had never met. Long story short, this girl had major drama with this other girl over some dude, and they rolled up on us with guns drawn in the back alley where we were smoking. I made it known immediately I did not know this woman and finessed my way out of that shit. But folks, listen. Don't go to places where alcohol is served with people you don't know, or at least make sure they go their separate ways once you get there. Story 5. I was visiting my grandmother and my uncle lived with her. He was suffering from bouts of dementia. One night, we all went out to a play, but my uncle stayed behind. As I walked into the kitchen when we got home, I heard him come down the kitchen stairs. He asked who was there, and I said, "Your niece." He responded, "I don't have a niece," then emerged from the staircase pointing a gun at me. I froze, not knowing what to say or do. My mom and dad came in behind me and yelled at me to run, so I did. They calmed him down, and he came around and remembered me again. We sat outside together that night, and he was horrified that he had threatened me like that. It broke my heart. They took him to a hospital that night, and he never left, dying only a few months later. I never saw him again after that night. It was one of the most tragic nights of my life. Story 7. Not me, But my best friend was held up at gunpoint. He was meeting some college friends for a birthday party, and one of them had a childhood friend show up. This friend was just acting crazy and showed up with 2 guns. He starts rambling about how he's going to go to Chicago to join some rappers gang. He starts pointing the guns at them and making them do things like unload the guns and point them at each other. Just real mental behavior. He especially is hostile towards my buddy because 1, he hadn't met him before, and 2, he was the only white one there. Even pointed the gun at his head and said, "Say you my bitch." My friend, being the idiot he was, refused, and the dude hit him with the gun. Eventually, they managed to convince this guy that they were going to get pizza or something like that, and left. As soon as they left, they called the cops, but he was gone. A few days later, he was arrested for murdering a cop a few towns over. The crazy thing was, this guy wasn't even that type of person at all before. He was raised in a middle-class family, and his dad was literally a Fed. He wasn't raised in the hood and had never been involved in gangs. The mutual friend hadn't seen him in years. It seemed like a genuine mental break where he was just in his own world, where he was in a made-up gang with enemies everywhere. Story 8. Not me, but 2 of my friends were walking to a park that the other friends and me waiting for them to bring a couple things. We had a BBQ. They were walking in an area that is pretty abandoned, except of a couple tall building, but it was mostly desert. Then a goofy-looking man with a tiny dog and a box of beers on a golf car went by and stopped immediately. Then the guy aimed his pistol at my friends and said, "Stop or I'm shooting." Then when he saw they were only teens, he took them with his golf car to us waiting at the park. He said he's the inspector of the area or something like that and helped us make the fire for the BBQ. Also, I saw he has 2 pistols near his ass. Turns out he's not a police, nor an inspector, nor sheriff, or something similar. A lot of PPL that have known him thought he's just a drank man on golf car. No one knew he had 2 pistols. TW, we didn't report him or anything. It's only happened 2 months ago. I see him sometimes, nice guy. Story 9. Had this crazy roommate after living in an unbearable living situation. Later found out he was a fentanyl user. I worked nights and he worked days. I was woken up in the middle of my night so midday in the middle of summer to the roommate barging into my room. He had a handgun, and I'm not a gun guy, so I couldn't tell you what it was. Pointed at me while I was in bed and yelled, "I want you out of this fucking place by tomorrow." This came out of nowhere. Paid my bills on time and really just kept to myself. I was out of there in a week or 2, thankfully. Weirdest experience of my life. Story 10. Went to a private high school that owned a bunch of land. Joined the paintball club. Go for an outing to privately owned land with club members. Walking through the first with paintball guns. All of a sudden, state troopers, local police, and park rangers all pull up guns drawn and pointing at us. It was a cold day. I was 15. After everyone put everything on the ground, I put my hands back in my pockets and all 3 squads drew on me. Apparently, some old lady saw us walking and called the cops because she saw a bunch of guns. The cops should have known right away given that we were all dressed in colorful competitive paintball gear. Not mil-spec, and you could hear the paintball guns shooting as they pulled up. Very distinct sound from real gunfire. Cops threatened to confiscate everybody's equipment and were generally super uncool. Sadly, the club got shut down after that, even though we were allowed to be there the whole time. Story 11. I worked at what once was the old porn shop in town. I had been there for a hair over 5 wires at the time. This night I was working open to close, 10 a.m. to 1 a.m., since my coworker was in Mexico for the week. Anyway, it was about 11 p.m. when this big dude walked in. I was already kinda leery of him because it was warm outside and he had a big hoodie on. I think the 2 customers I had in the movie section were on edge by him too. He wandered around for IDs, say about 45 miles, maybe an hour. The moment the 2 Ed customer walked out the front door, he was over the counter with a Mario leap from hell. There was a .38 to the side of my head and screaming for money before I could even register what was going on entirely. I got lucky. He took the $100 or so out of my drawer and an armful of cigarette packs and left. Right into the cops, sitting at the gas station across the St. Story 12. I've had a few guns pointed at me. First time was scariest. I was 14 and hanging with Eugene Asenko at his 21-year-old brother's house. His brother, a former Marine, and had just been hired as a police officer in Rye, NY. For some reason, he started screwing with me and walked up and put his service revolver, back before cops carried semi-auto pistols, to my head and cocked the hammer. I walked away from him and he continued to follow me around the apartment. I was afraid if he stumbled that he'd shoot me, so I stopped moving away, and after several minutes of bat-crazy stupidity by the idiot holding the gun to my head, he finally put it away. I was attending college in Albany, NY, and stumbling home from bars walking through Washington Park one winter night. Car pulls up next to me, and guy leans across seat and points gun at me and tells me to get in. I probably could have bolted behind a tree and disappeared, but I decided I wanted to get him out of the car, so I pretended to slip on ice and started screaming that I broke my leg. I thought dude would get out and try to lift me into car and I would take him out. Luckily, my plan failed and he drove away. Years later, while still in Albany, I was leaving same park early evening after watching a performance of The Wiz. I was walking with my ex-wife and I noticed someone following us in the shrubbery parallel to us on our trail. I knew we were being set up, but I couldn't tell my wife because she would have freaked and not followed my instructions and might get me killed defending her when she did something stupid. As we neared the exit of the park, someone stepped out of the bushes pointing a gun and said, "Freeze, I got you covered." But we were only 10 paces from exiting the park onto a sidewalk with a bunch of other folks, so I grabbed my wife by the waist and pulled her past the gunman onto the sidewalk with engaging with the gunman. I think he was pissed that I ignored him. And when my wife asked what he said, I didn't even tell her about the gun because she wouldn't have been able to handle it. After getting laid off and divorced, I moved back to Westchester County and started working with my cousin, who was a contractor, and who had a serious crack thing going on. We were coming back from a Joe in CT, and Billy wanted to stop in Bridgeport at a strip club. There was some problems while we were leaving, and my cousin ripped off or got into an argument with a crack dealer who chased us out, and as I was driving us the hell out of there, shot my cousin in the head through the windshield. He didn't die, but he is blind in his left eye, and he is even crazier now than he was before getting shot. Story 13. Back in '84, I was 20 on weekend vacation, on a very quiet Maine island with 6 guys, and next door was a guy and woman who was 40. They were not a couple, and she took an interest in me for a day and night. When I walked her back to their house, he opened the door with a gun pointed in my face. He was drunk and not real happy with me, but thankfully after a while she was able to talk him down. Scared the shit out of me, and I just couldn't believe it happened. She wanted to get together after the weekend, but I opted out. She was very pretty, though. Story 14. I was hanging out with a woman at her place after taking the Mensa test with her and a group of other people. We were watching The Tick on DVD, and she casually pulls a handgun out from behind the couch and puts it to my head. She asks me what I am going to do now. I look at her dead in the eyes and say, "Nothing, because if you shoot me with that BB gun, it's only going to piss me off." Her eyes got wide, and she said it scared her that I knew it was a BB gun. I told her it was crazy to put a gun to my head in the first place. I'd seen the barrel as she pointed it, and it was way too narrow to be anything other than a BB gun or maybe a .22. I made an educated guess that it looked more like a BB gun than a real one. Story 15. This will get lost, but I was living in Philadelphia, walking home from the bars one night with my friend and passed 2 men. They turned around and said, "Give me your shit." I said, no? They both pulled out guns and pointed them at us. We were both drunk. My friend was smart. I was dumb. She threw her purse and ran away. I played tug of war with my purse. Guy eventually hit me in the head with his gun and ran off. I chased him and he was laughing. Really stupid of me, but I lived. Story 16. I was trying to break up with my abusive high school boyfriend. His grandfather, whom he lived with, had become obsessed with me because I was the only one who showed him support after his wife of 60-plus years passed away. The grandfather couldn't deal with it, and despite how much I explained after 5 years I was sick of being a literal punching bag, he grabbed his .357 and said, "We're all going to be together now?" and fired directly at my face. The gun misfired, gave me enough time to run to my car and GTFO of Dodge. I never looked back. My mom and my dad's ex kept in contact with the old man and tried guilt-tripping me. I wasn't having it. Story 17. Drunk dad and I got into an argument. I tried to move past him in a narrow hallway and ended up bumping him. He took it as me trying to hit him, so went and got his pistol. I ended up grabbing the pistol, a .22, so nothing too damaging, and pulled it to my chest, screaming, "You don't have the balls to do it, old man." Fortunately, I was right. Snatched the gun from him and tried to leave. He ran and grabbed a shotgun next. This time I took the shotgun from him, breaking a few of his ribs in the process. I was around 30 at this time, and my wife and I were living with my parents after I had just returned from a deployment with the Army Reserves, like I had only been home a couple weeks at this point. So I was very much in a combat mindset, and certainly reacted in a way that I probably would not have if I had not been still fresh in that mindset. Story 18. Has happened to me twice. I was 17 working in a convenience store and a guy walked up and placed an energy drink on the counter and walked away. Next minute I had a gun to my forehead being pushed back while he jumped over the counter. While moving back, I popped open the cash register and handed him a bag. He grabbed the cash, jumped back over the counter, and grabbed the energy drink and left. Second time was a few weeks later, same MO, so I knew what was happening, but I had my little sister sitting in the back by the safe. I popped the safe before he came with the gun and started moving back. The guy pistol whipped the security guard and jumped the counter he started at the cash register. My sister startled, which caught his attention, and went to her. When he saw the safe, he demanded we open it. I went to Garb for the keys, which was kept in a box on a shelf. As I pull at the box, I realized the owner's gun was in the box. So I grabbed the keys and quickly shoved the box back, opened the safe, and let the guy take what he wanted, and he left. Owner was insured, so I was not going to be a hero. He was too cheap for a silent alarm, so our survival was above his cash. I still can't believe to today how calm I was on both occasions. So calm that the first time when I called the owner he threw, I was pranking him. Fun times. Story 19. Here's my story. I was 17 and worked at a daycare for special needs babies. It was wintertime, so it was dark by 5 p.m. I walked home every night, about a 20 minutes walk. On my way, I passed a guy friend's house and we spoke a few mins. I'm now about 5 mins from my home when I feel someone grab my arm as if we were a couple walking together. I smiled and looked up expecting to see my guy friend. I'm 5 feet, my friend was almost 6 feet, which is why I looked up first. It wasn't him. It was a short guy with a mask. Then I felt the gun in my ribs. He said, "Keep walking or I will shot you." Lots of cars driving by, but I was scared to scream. He asked for the stuff in my pocket, which was just a small wallet with $5. Damn wallet cost me $7 LOL. He looks in it quickly and said, "Keep walking, don't look back or I will shot." I kept walking home, legs made of jello and crying. Cops were called, but nothing could be done. 10 years later, the wallet was left at my mom's door, still with my ID in it. Crazy stuff. Story 2015. I was at a huge party in the woods. Hundreds of people. One large group was having fight night. Things went too far and one of the drunker ones got his knife stolen in a brawl. So he goes to get an AR-15 out of his truck. I grabbed the group of girls I was with and told them to follow me. They thought he was just being dramatic and I was overreacting. I finally get people to start moving toward the trail out, take lead, and just a few steps around the corner I look up to see him standing 15 yards away with the rifle pointed at my head. He started yelling at everyone to get on the ground or he would kill us all. We were all frozen in terror. I finally shook my head at him in disbelief, looked at the ground and walked past him. He followed us for a few minutes, aiming his gun at everyone and making threats. He mugged a few for their cash and drugs and started throwing rocks and bricks at cars trying to get out. Tried to stand in front of one, but they didn't stop, and he got a good bump. I've never breathed a bigger sigh of relief than when those tires touched the asphalt. I still can't believe that happened. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it, be sure to write comments and share your stories.